Welcome to the Crypto Guild. I'm your host Rahul, and on this channel we talk everything crypto. So guys, I want to wish all of you a very happy new year. I'm excited to get back into bringing you more content about the crypto ecosystem, and today's video is going to be about DAOs. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of DAOs and why they're getting so much attention now. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. Okay, so let's talk about what is a DAO. So DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. But what you need to understand is that this concept was first proposed by Dan Larimer. Now, I have a huge amount of respect for Dan Larimer. He's achieved a lot of things in the blockchain and crypto world, and he is the creator of, Steemit, BitShares, and also of EOS. .1. Initially, he proposed it back in 2015, and then in 2016, we had Ethereum's very own Vitalik Buterin talk and further refine the process, right, about DAOs. So DAOs are basically organization structures, right, to bring people together who have a common mission. You can think of it similar to how we have company structures today, but the attributes of a DAO are completely different, right? So for one, owned by all the participants that are part of a particular DAO, right? DAOs don't have any hierarchy. So in traditional companies, you might see hierarchies like, CEOs and upper management, middle management, and then the workers. There's no such hierarchy over here, right? And third is that DAOs give you a way for you to actually raise funds for the mission that all of you have come together on, right? So that's another big difference. It gives you the ability to raise funds and manage your own treasury, right? And how it essentially works is that the rules of a DAO are coded into smart contracts, and right now the platform of choice is Ethereum. And from that point on, the evolution of that DAO is done by community voting, right? So that's generally the construct, that's generally how it's set up and it works. And so DAOs essentially are the beginnings of what we might see a lot of in Web 3.0 as we move forward, right? And another good thing about DAOs is that, truly in the spirit of blockchain, they are fully autonomous and they are transparent, right? So no changes come into a particular DAO unless all the members of that DAO vote on those changes and agree, right, after crossing a certain threshold. And since these are built on open source blockchains, you can always audit the code of a DAO, the smart contract code, and you can see exactly how the DAO is working. So transparency is key, and we'll talk about a particular example as we move forward, right? Okay, so next, let's cover at a very high level how DAOs work. But essentially, it's bringing people together under a common mission. And that mission can literally be anything. So let's use a really simple example. So let's say you're all for getting into the NFT craze, right? You see digital art really appreciating in value, and you want to be a part of that ecosystem. You want to profit from, what's going on with NFTs today. But the problem is NFTs can be pretty expensive, with like even simple ones costing you as much as $250,000. So let's say you get together with a bunch of your friends and you come up with the concept that you want to create a DAO, which is essentially an investment DAO, right? It's going to invest in NFTs and it's going to do it sort of as a collective, right? So it's going to essentially take the funds from all the different users or the community that makes up that particular DAO and will then invest on behalf of the community, and you will essentially get ownership in those NFTs according to your stake in the DAO. So let's say this is generally the idea, right? So you start thinking about how the DAO will evolve. So you'll think about voting rules, how changes will be made to the DAO. You'll talk about, what kind of DAO tokens you want to create. Essentially, your tokens are a way for you to raise funds in the particular DAO. And then you will essentially help either through the help of programmers, or these days there's even like no code or low code platforms which you can use to really draw up these rules in a smart contracting language. And you likely end up using Ethereum today, although you're going to see a lot more choices coming into the market soon. So, right, you have essentially 3 steps once you've got the basic idea ready. your first step is to code your idea into smart contracts. And I just mentioned how, right? So you're going to code your core functionality. You're going to talk about how the DAO is going to be governed. You're going to talk about how voting takes place. And you're going to talk about how your treasury is managed, how you raise funds and how you allocate and disperse those funds towards certain activities, right? Step number 2, once you've got that basic in place, you're going to actually raise funds. So this more often than not means you're actually going to create a token of your own. You're going to release that token to the public, and you're going to encourage the public to buy that token. And by buying that token, you can say that the members who are interested in your mission, they have a stake in the DAO and they have ownership within the DAO, right? So you can either get this ownership by getting the tokens via cash, right? Or you can provide certain cryptocurrencies, and that can be and tokens can be given to you in exchange of the cryptocurrencies you provide. Like, for example, you might provide Ethereum or Bitcoin, and you might get a certain number of that DAO's tokens in return, right? Once that's done, you essentially deploy this smart contract on the Ethereum network, and that's it. You're good to go. From that point onwards, the DAO starts to run, and then the evolution of the DAO is completely in the hands of its community members. And it's usually done in proportion to how much stake or at what stake you bought into the DAO with your initial investment. So those are the three really high level steps about how to set up your own DAO. So if you guys have a common mission and you're looking to get it fulfilled, I would ask you to look at DAOs as a really promising construct under which you can do this today. Now, I promised you at the start of this video that I would talk about why DAOs are getting more traction now, 5 years after they were, first conceived. The story of the DAO was that back in 2016, and essentially we had a team called Slack.it who came up with a concept of creating a venture fund DAO. And the general idea there was that they'll raise funds in the DAO, and then those funds would then be allocated to new and upcoming projects on the Ethereum blockchain, right? And if those projects were successful, you would get to participate in the success of those projects on a profit sharing basis. So that was basically the idea. And it was, I think, the largest crowdfunding amount that was ever raised in history, and I think it was like 250 million. So they did, as we mentioned before, the basic steps. They deployed their code onto the blockchain, they raised the money, they found out that there was actually a bug in the smart contract code that had been written. Now, just the way DAOs work, this particular code was identified as buggy, but to change the code, since the DAO has already been deployed, you need to get all the members to vote and agree that the code needs to be changed, even though we all know that it has a problem. During this particular process, a hacker was able to exploit the problem in the code and was able to make off with, I think, $50 to $60 million in Ethereum, right? And essentially, the only thing was that there was a huge time lag between the time the community voted to fix the problem, and the hacker took advantage of this time, because this is how DAOs evolve and work, sort of inbuilt into the DAO DNA, if you will. Long story short, the funds were restored eventually to the users, but this was actually a very big thing in history, because there was a whole group of contingents who said that the funds are gone, and in blockchains, we don't actually like to roll back any transactions, otherwise how is it any better than a centralized system? So this particular incident gave rise to Ethereum Classic. So you'll notice the Ethereum Classic is ETC. Those are basically the bunch of people who said it doesn't matter that the hack happened, it happened, it was a mistake, and we have to live with that mistake and move forward from there. And the Ethereum you see today was essentially a soft fork of the Ethereum code, which restored, the funds that were lost in that particular hack. So it divided the community up, the Ethereum community at that time, it divided them up. Essentially, that incident left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, and that was the end of DAOs, for that time period. But essentially, the rise in DeFi activity has brought DAOs back into focus. And so, we're beginning to see the mention of DAOs a whole lot. And, being part of a DAO outside of like, moving towards a common mission can actually be really lucrative as well. You can make a lot of money as well when you're part of a DAO. Now the DAO ecosystem is already pretty big, but we're in the very, very early stages of DAOs. So it's good for you guys just to have an understanding of what they are, how they work, and what they might be used for in the future. But there's obviously still a lot of work and a lot of development to do. So the DAO landscape as we have it today, right? You have DAO operating systems, you have investment DAOs, you have DAOs that give like grants to like projects, you have DAOs that invest in NFTs, so collector DAOs, you have DAOs that are based on certain protocols like Compound, Uniswap, Aave, etc. You have DAOs that perform particular like services. So lots of different categories of DAOs. Now, how do you join DAOs, right? So there's 3 steps in joining a DAO, right? You essentially have to discover it, you have to onboard yourself, and then you have to begin to contribute. Now, there's not one location where you can get like a comprehensive list of DAOs, but I highly suggest going through coinmarketcap.com. They have a view of the DAOs. I'll put the links up in the description, and they're here flashing on the screen as well. And then you can even go to snapshot.org to get a list of different DAOs. You can even do an advanced search on Twitter actually, where you can filter by DAOs and you can get a list of the DAOs that are out there. So you should review this, see which ones are of interest to you, and then go into some discovery, right? So where you can learn more about the DAO, right? Once you've done that, you have to onboard the DAO, and this is the part which is slightly tricky. There's no, streamlined onboarding process because we're very much in the early days of DAOs, but essentially you can do this through Discord, Twitter, Telegram, GitHub, and many, many more. And there's really 3 questions you should ask yourself when you're trying to figure out the DAO and how it works. Is like, who's who in the DAO? How is this DAO organized, and what is the current priority of the DAO? So if you mess around a little bit, you'll probably get the answer to those questions, and then you'll be in the know about where that DAO is headed, what rules it operates on, and what are its priorities. And you can use tools like DeepDAO, DAO Masters, and DAOs like Forefront to share insights, data, and case studies on various DAOs and their tokens. So that'll help with your discovery process as well. Now we're quickly going to talk about the pros and cons of DAOs. So like I said, this is very, very early days, but some of the pros are obviously they're trustless, that they can't be shut down, and they're open source, auditable, and completely transparent, right? They're also flexible because they can bring people together from different parts of the world in a seamless kind of way, and they give you the ability to raise your own funds to fulfill whatever common mission you folks have, right? Some of the cons of DAOs is that they are vulnerable to attacks. Obviously, business secrets are tough to keep when you have a DAO-like structure. Since everything is transparent and auditable, it's hard to keep any business secrets, which companies do today. And the other thing obviously is, since it's early days, there's no regulatory framework to manage DAOs, so all of it's really evolving. So we will see. And then another thing I would mention is that the voting mechanism that's used in DAOs, that still needs a lot of work. And last but not least, I think the future of DAOs is really, really promising. And it could be that in about 5 years from now, most online communities organize themselves in terms of DAOs, right? Because it's a much more fundamentally efficient way of doing things, right? And they can spur a lot of innovation. But that said, I don't know that you can use a DAO for every use case out there. Traditional company structures might be better suited to some of those use cases. So that's it for this video, guys. Hopefully you know a little bit more about DAOs, and in the future I will release videos to talk about specific DAOs, how you can join them, and how you can profit off of them as well. So thank you very much, guys. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and until next time, as always, peace.